Why is the number of asylum seekers in Canada surging? The number of asylum seekers in Canada has been steadily increasing in recent years, but since 2022, this growth has accelerated at an alarming rate. Notably, 90% of asylum applications are concentrated in two provinces, both of which have struggled to meet the demands of the influx and have called for federal government assistance. Despite significant efforts to welcome immigrants and refugees, these provinces have been unable to fully meet the financial and resource requirements. Part of the reason for this increase undoubtedly relates to the growing number of people facing dangerous situations worldwide. From political conflicts and economic crises to severe natural disasters, these tragedies drive thousands to flee their homes in search of safety and stability. However, other factors have also contributed to the recent surge in asylum seekers in Canada. So, what has made Canada such an attractive destination, and what is fueling this sudden increase? Canada has seen a significant rise in asylum seekers, partly due to its growing international ranking for refugee acceptance. According to the United Nations, Canada was recently among the top 10 countries for asylum applications, and last year it rose to 5th place. If this trend continues, Canada could even reach the top 3 by 2024. This marked change highlights the significant increase in the refugee influx, presenting major challenges for the country's immigration system. A contributing factor to this situation is the reduced screening standards within Canada's immigration program, which has opened doors to more temporary residents. The number of temporary residents in Canada has soared to an unprecedented 3 million people, comprising over 7% of the population. This substantial shift in Canada's immigration policy has created pressure on infrastructure and public services, especially in the provinces hosting the majority of refugees. For those forced to flee oppression or violence, Canada is a desirable destination with various options. One popular route is to apply for asylum through the International Resettlement Program, a program implemented in North America and Europe that accepts refugees from war-torn areas and resettles them in host countries. Canada has welcomed hundreds of thousands of people through this program, notably receiving a significant wave of Ukrainian refugees this year. Unlike European countries and the US, Canada enjoys a geographical advantage with 3 sides surrounded by ocean, which insulates it from neighboring conflict zones. This isolation spares Canada from uncontrolled migration pressures that countries like the UK, which faces migration across the English Channel, and the US, dealing with migration across the Mexico border, contend with. In the past, about half of Canada's asylum applications came from its sole neighbour, the US, with most applicants crossing by land at the well-known Roxham Road in Quebec. However, after Canada shut down this route in early 2023, asylum claims from the US dropped sharply to below 10%. Surprisingly, despite this drop, the overall number of asylum claims in Canada surged, raising questions. Where are these new applications coming from? Analysts note that around the same time Canada and the US agreed to close the Roxham route, Canada made a quiet yet significant change in its air entry policy. People seeking to enter Canada by air, including asylum seekers, found the process much easier. This relaxed policy created an opportunity for high-risk country migrants who quickly seized it, reasoning, "This is our chance to get into Canada, claim asylum, and try to settle here." Ordinarily, travelers from one of the 140 restricted countries could not simply book a flight to Canada. They required a tourist visa and proof of an intent to return home, a policy designed to manage asylum seekers from countries with high risks of illegal immigration. Previously, travelers from these nations needed a return ticket, proof of accommodations, and financial resources to support their stay. But in early 2023, to clear a backlog of over 2 million tourist applications, the Canadian government decided to temporarily waive these requirements, inadvertently opening the door to a new wave of asylum seekers. In response to the backlog, Canada also eased eligibility requirements for certain temporary visa applications. An internal memo obtained by the Globe and Mail projected an additional 8,600 asylum claims from air arrivals under this new policy, yet reality exceeded expectations with over 24,000 additional applications in 2023. The suspension of thorough screening has led some economic migrants, those seeking economic opportunities rather than fleeing war, to take advantage of the change. This may explain Canada's higher proportion of asylum claims from countries like Mexico and India rather than war-torn regions like Ukraine or South Sudan. Although Canada reinstated screening requirements in early 2024, the government also implemented automated processing to speed up applications. This raised concerns over rigor, as applications deemed low risk by algorithms are now approved at a 99% rate without in-depth review. Even with screening reinstated, the number of air-based asylum applications has not declined and could surpass last year's figures. Moreover, asylum claims are rising among people who already live and study in Canada, particularly international students. In the past 6 months, asylum claims from international students have increased substantially. Although students must demonstrate financial stability when applying for study permits, nearly 13,000 asylum claims from this group were filed in the first half of 2024, almost triple the total for 2022. Analysts suggest that many students may have come to Canada with hopes of staying long-term, encouraged by slogans like study, discover, work, stay. However, faced with a significant gap between permanent residency demand and available spots, many students now seek asylum as a means to remain in Canada legally. The rise in international students has become a significant factor in the asylum claim surge. With over 1 million international students, but only around 485,000 available permanent residency spots, this imbalance has created intense pressure on students hoping to settle. In 2022, this disparity became particularly evident as more students sought pathways to permanent residency. Recently, Canada has tightened post-graduation work permit regulations for international students, prioritizing employment for Canadian citizens and addressing youth unemployment. This shift impacts tens of thousands of students, narrowing their options and prompting some to seek asylum as their only way to stay legally in Canada. According to international law, Canada is obligated to process any asylum application filed within its territory, regardless of how the applicant arrived. This ensures each applicant's right to a hearing, but due to the backlog, these hearings are often delayed for years. In the interim, asylum seekers may receive work permits and access to healthcare, making this a viable option for many when other avenues close. Unfortunately, some students and foreign workers have been misled by non-lawyers who advise them to file asylum claims to access these benefits. With around 175,000 international students facing visa expiration next year, along with a large number of temporary workers in similar situations, the demand for pathways to residency in Canada is growing more urgent. For many, returning home is not a feasible option, especially after investing heavily in their lives in Canada. The decision to leave everything behind and start anew requires significant sacrifices, making it incredibly challenging when policies change suddenly. Last month, Canada's federal immigration minister acknowledged the need for stricter measures to ensure tourist visa applicants truly intend to visit. The government is also drafting a temporary plan to relieve pressure on provinces like Ontario and Quebec and provide support for asylum seekers while they await decisions, with an announcement expected in the coming weeks.